these guys are huge, and they do a lot of credit, right? 75,000 employees. So how do you convince them? What's a unique value? Why not them developing in-house? My biggest challenge of every day since the last 4 years. So first of all, the beauty of this space compared to the industry that I was before, which was e-commerce and retail, that it's so much wider, and conferences that are super generalist, like I went to the Retail X or in the Javits Center in New York, in my past experience, and everything was super like combined. So I recommend you to avoid industries that are not so focused. And so in Latam, it was we didn't require more than $400,000 in investments in conferences for the last 2 or 3 years to be known by 80% of the industry. So it was very niche at that time. Here in Miami, we have 2 or 3 of those 10, 15 biggest events. So it was very natural for me to join those events. So that puts out the brand recognition, the brand awareness, the winning these competitions, and all of that starts creating the noise, the momentum. So, but that still doesn't convince them to use you. So actually, what's the straight answer on how, in terms of competition? So, are anybody here familiar with H2O.ai or Data Robot? Yeah, 3. Okay. So these are AutoML companies, the largest AutoML companies. The market size of AutoML is $700 million with a CAGR, compounded annual growth rate, of 45% per year for the next 10 years. It's 10% more per year than generative AI, but generative AI in 10 years will be 10 times the size. But you have the buzzword, the noise there. Everybody's talking about ChatGPT, generative AI, large language models, foundational models. Nobody's talking about AutoML, so I go quietly into this space. It's only 10 times smaller than where everybody is distracted, right? So, and we're actually doing all of that, but in a different way. So we are going to a market if you go to Data Robot and H2O and ask them for credit models or specifics into recommending me credit strategies, give me alternative data for credit, they don't know, because they serve oil and gas and manufacturing and 200 industries. So we are the only AutoML company in the world 100% focused into credit. That's one. Secondly, we have alternative data. We have expert models for credit for 14 financial institutes, for 40 financial products. And we have a component called models on the fly, which enables non-data scientists, like credit risk directors, to launch models without being a data scientist. So that's one core product that we built. So you can just launch a model in 1 minute before jumping a meeting. You can launch a model in 50 minutes, or you can hire data scientists as a service from our company to make you a world-class model in 3 weeks. So actually, we now launched a new feature called Pocket Actions, that actually, if you want high intensity, you get 60% manual, 40% AutoML, and then if you are in closing periods of, closing season of the last week of the month, you reduce the manual to 40 for approving manually decisions. So you leave out 70 or 80% to the AutoML, and you have vacation mode, which is like the bank can still be adapting their credit rules, their credit policies, their credit decisions, their credit strategies with the credit risk directors in vacations.
What's the company? I didn't know the name, I was going to ask them, I'm like, maybe everybody knows. That's the name, right?
Yeah.
Quash AI?
Yeah.
So you guys have an office in Miami?
Yeah.
And what's the number of, what do you do in Miami? Is it like the engineering team is here, or like?
Nothing. That's
It's just you?
That's a great question. Nothing. My dream is to get the amazing talent that we have here. UX, UI, I'm eagerly to speak with 5 or 6 of the young guys and say, come work with us, let's get stock options, let's grow, and I'm actually super open to do that, but we're super limited based on the time. I don't know if you're familiar, but nobody is raising money right now.
Right.
Like 80% of the employees of the VCs in the last 6 months are gone. The first rule of thumb: if you didn't have startup background and you were working for a VC, you will never work for a VC again. Things like that are like happening to change because the actually only added value that you can, or most of, there's not that rule, because there are some like Anderson Horowitz or a few of them, or Founders Fund, or some of them had a very sophisticated analytical background that they didn't need it to be as CEO or startup founder to become join to the VC. So it's very hard to raise money, and the recommendation from these VC funds are just like hibernate, like a bear, hibernate for 1 or 2 years, like
Right.
just take profit on sustainable decisions. We were open in Spain and Brazil. We had to put that in standby. We had to double down efforts in Mexico because that's the market where we were doing things right. So, I mean, I would love to have an amazing environment of people from Miami. Now we're seeing a lot of, not like 10 years ago where you didn't have any engineering talent. Now you have a lot of talent, but somebody said that living in Miami is practically impossible. Said that at the beginning. Expensive, right?
Yeah.
I think everybody here agrees on that. So it's a trade-off. Like, you're gonna start interviewing here engineers that without any background experience, they wanna ask you for 80, 100K, and they're not even happy with that. But at the end of the day, but your largest, the most impressive employee that you have down there will make 100K in 8 years. So it's a balance.
So why do you think VC are gone now, or not funding?
So
Financial environment.
yeah, so let's go back to the 4 different elements of the macroeconomic things that have happened in the market. So first, we had in February of 2022 the tech bubble, which people were saying, okay, it's impossible that 1,000 or 10,000 startups are valued in more than $1 billion. Like, if you compare that with 3 or 4 years ago, it's unrealistic. Price to earning ratios of 300 or whatever. So obviously that impacted, and that created a huge downgrade, which most of you are familiar with that, right? February 2022, last year. And then we had, so if the stocks are down, why you're gonna put money in a company so risky like ours, or the startups that you're familiar with, that 95% of them disappear, like this building that had 70 startups and now they went down to just 1 floor. So that happened. Okay, it's right here. So why you're gonna give me $1 if you can put it in Apple, in Facebook, in Google, if you know that will go up what happened in the last 2 or 3 years, when 150% up, the 3 of them, right? The FANGs. So that's one.
But the market has recovered this year, right?
It's recovering, but then you had the event of the Silicon Valley Bank, which affected 75,000 startups, where for a week they didn't know if they're going to survive, thanks to a letter that we got on Sunday. I mean, from Friday to Sunday, 75,000 startups that you don't know how many employees have, didn't know for 48 hours how they were going to pay the school of their kids. And that was 6 months ago, right?
But they got the money, right?
They got the money on Sunday, okay, but
When you have that responsibility, it's on your shoulder.
and then this,
And it wasn't FDIC insured.
and then this some crazy guy went to the Bahamas from FTX and triggered everything that you saw with the SEC. So, I mean, that was on March. right? So we're in July, so people are in the summer in vacation, so things are going back. Well, we have 1 month ago the debt ceiling news that for 2 weeks we had Yellen saying, guys, we don't know how to pay this. 2 weeks, like openly. I don't know who saw her, but I was seeing her every night and sending it to my friends. Guys, are you seeing this? And nobody was saying like, so what? Man, $35 trillion are about to be, you know, the most stable economy in the world is about to collapse, and I mean, forget about everything.
Then
So-
you had the layoff of Facebook.
The layoffs,
Google, the
so,
layoffs of
yeah, so
technology.
those,
Downgrading the US government.
yeah,
Yeah,
so,
we just got it.
so
Downgrading.
the downgrade of the
Factors.
AAA, so yeah, so you have those things that at the end of the day, for a startup like us, normally, in normal times, 3 years ago, you only had to have 9 months of runway. That was the norm. Now we need to have 24 months of runway. So I have that money in the bank, hibernating. And at some point, when everything recovers, when we can raise again what we did, I'm going to be super happy to grow the office here. And that was the question. About 15 minutes ago. Ready?
No,
Yes.
I mean, it seems that if we want to ask like more questions, we would have answers, but we have to leave. So,
Let's take a picture here. With
Oh, yeah,
and,
yeah.
and everybody, I'll have it up.
does everybody fit here?
Okay, no, sounds great.
Let's see.
Thanks so
No,
much.
no, you guys come also to the.
Can everybody come, I guess, a little bit together, so we can, get a picture?